Great.
Right, Sam.
Lady Zoom.
we are. You know, all of us have been blown away by your album. You know, it's fantastic, and you know, I know that Barbara has done. She did a review of it last week, and Barbara, a lot of sort of questions came out of that review, didn't it?
They did really, Sam. Again, thank you for joining us. It's the album itself had its origins in that time that we were all living through. But my first question really relates to the wonderful instruments and musicians that you have on the album, sharing the production of each of the tracks with you. First of all, I wanted to ask about your violin, because it was Dave Swarbrick's, I understand. So
yeah,
can you tell us what it was like, you know, and how did playing a violin with such a musical pedigree inform some of the creations that you've put on this album?
Okay, so I would have been about 20 years old, I think, when I met Swarb at his house for the first time. And it was a website called Bright Young Folk, who were doing a series of interviews called In Their Footsteps, where they'd get young whippersnappers like me to go and meet their heroes and interview them. So I went over to Swarb's house, which in and of itself was a strange thing to do, because he had his obituary printed up, because, you know, the Telegraph printed his obituary before he died, and it was framed just inside his front door, which I managed to knock off with my fiddle case just as I went into his house, which wasn't the greatest start to meeting your hero. But anyway, and I was playing the Great War violin at the time. That was my fiddle that I was playing most of the time, and he just said, look, let me have a go on that violin. And he sort of, you know, had a little tune on it. He said, look, I've got a fiddle that could eat your fiddle up. And he went off to his bedroom, where he kept his other fiddles under his bed, and he got this one out. Lovely instrument. And he said, look, I don't play this anymore. Take it home. If you like it, you know, we'll come to some kind of agreement. And so actually I bought it off him, and I've played that fiddle for the last 10 or so years. And it's an amazing instrument, actually. It's loud, and it's one of those instruments you can take from 0 to 10, you know, like it has all the stuff you need. It's just a brilliant instrument. And I don't know, I mean, it's an incredible thing to be playing Swarb's instrument, because, you know, from the age of 6 or 7, I was dragged around to Cropredy and various festivals and stuff by my parents, and, you know, I saw Swarb playing, guesting with Fairport and doing gigs with Kev Dempsey and all that kind of thing. And he is the reason that I play the violin. So to sort of have this instrument that says on the inside "made for Dave Swarbrick," you know, is crazy. And the other thing with it is that, I don't know if you know this, but when you get a fiddle cleaned and serviced, they put dry rice inside the violin, shake it around, and then pour the rice out to get all the dust out. And every time I get that violin serviced, I say, please don't clean the inside, because there's a ball about that big of like fluff and hair. And I just think that must be the essence of Dave Swarbrick, is just rolling around inside that fiddle. So anyway, yeah, but in terms of how it sort of inspires me, you know, the thing I loved about Dave as a kid was that he just did what he did. And when I interviewed him and asked him about his style, he's just like, well, I do what I do because it's what I wanted to do. And it's that kind of sense of, I'm just going to do what I want to do and not care what anyone else thinks, that actually is really relevant to this new record. And I just sort of thought, you know what, it's lockdown, everyone's miserable, I've got time to make the thing that I really want to make. So yeah, I guess in a way that's part of what that fiddle brings to what I do now in my life.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the tracks themselves were inspired by events and people.
Yeah.
So was Dave part of that inspiration? Obviously, in terms of history and the reason that you play the violin, yes. But you know, it must be a little bit like having a Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder if you're playing it an instrument he used to own.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. I met him a few times after I interviewed him and before he died. And he, you know, he was always so supportive of younger players like me. And he loved it. He just loved, you know, he came to a few gigs that I did and was always so encouraging. So yeah, it is a bit like having a little swab on my shoulder occasionally, you know. But the thing is with Dave, and I suppose it's the same with people like Martin Carthy and stuff, is that they, as long as you're doing something with this tradition, you know, with this music that's respectful, but as long as you're being respectful, you can't do anything wrong. So I don't feel like the ghost of Swarbrick is like saying, no, stop it, stop doing that, play traditional music only, you know, or whatever. I don't feel like that. I just feel like he was such a supportive person in my life, but you know, before he died. So it's a lovely thing to be playing his fiddle and actually carrying his sort of, I don't know, his essence in that ball of fluff through into what I do, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm conscious of time, so we're going to do the rounds. Alan's joined us now, so welcome, Alan. Alan, Tony, have you got a question for Sam?
Yeah. So listening to the album, I mean, you wrote it during lockdown, but there's this incredible exuberance about it. Was that deliberate? You're going to lift yourself out of it?
That's a really good question. In that, I guess we all went through enormous ups and downs, mostly downs, during that period, didn't we? And the album started off with just me faffing about. I didn't really set out on a mission as such to do anything. But I mean, I don't know if you sort of read about it in the press release or anything, but I never touched the violin ever whilst writing it. So it just started out with me playing those instruments. I've just bought loads of cheap but not very good guitars, a couple of good ones, and just faffing about on instruments that I actually can't play. And the pieces weren't really for anything. They weren't about people or places or memories or anything. And I didn't set out with an emotional agenda. But I think what happened very quickly was that I became like writing music and, you know, just sort of creating these things suddenly became very linked with specific people, places and memories and stuff. And I think that, you know, for a lot of people anyway, emotions were just heightened. Like the downs were really down.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, on the flip side, when I was writing this stuff and I was really ecstatically happy, it was like, yeah, come on, I'm right. I love this. I love it. So I think that shows in the new record. Like the highs are super high, and it kind of it's that feeling of flying. You know, I really wanted that to come across because the emotional journey. I mean, I sound like like an artist, you know, whatever, but you know, it really was like a far more emotional an experience than I've ever had making music, writing this album, you know, and to the extent that I couldn't sleep. I'd sort of stay up really, really late and like obsess over these tunes, and then I'd go to bed and I'd just be like do 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 do, and I became a complete obsession for about 6 months of my life, where I just kind of went a bit crazy writing it. So yeah, it feels good for it to be out there, and people are messaging me saying that they're feeling it, you know, like, and that's a great thing, isn't it? If you can get people to feel something intense when they listen to your music. So I think it's worked, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think that happened with us. I mean, Barbara, you picked out a couple of tracks, and I mean, I think that they were sort of in the high category.
Yes, absolutely. A very hopeful album. I mean, just to give you a quote from the review I did last week, Sam, I said that this album speaks of time and place in a way that only the most creatively expert musicians can share with their listeners. I thought it was just so beautiful. absolutely beautifully
Thank you.
constructed and hopeful, and that's what we need to be still listening to, you know, and making sure that we continue to be hopeful into the future. So and so the melodies were quite infectious, and sometimes you had really interesting rhythms behind the tracks. I'm thinking of let me just, one of them has a sort of tinkly riff on the piano. Westering has that tinkly riff on the piano that is then overlaid with the violin, and almost a counter melody that the acoustic guitar is playing. It's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Thanks. That's really, yeah, no, it's lovely. I love it when people, yeah, it's the most fulfilling thing when people enjoy it, and because that's what we do it for. That's the worst thing about lockdown. If you can't make music with people or for people, what on earth is the point? So the fact that it's now out there and this is music for people to enjoy, like it's actually finally feeling like it was a thing worth doing. Yeah.
Let's pop down to Alan now. Alan, you've got a question.
Yeah, apologies for being late. Sam, nice to see you there.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I suppose this I called up on what you just said, but I'm assuming this album could have always been subtitled "Music That's Inside My Head." So that's what you sort of said in a way, that it's all in there. You can't sleep because all you want to do is get it out, and now you have. It's a hell of an achievement. Yeah. Barbara reviewed this last week, as she said, and I've just had the opportunity to listen to it this week. So, yeah, there's some excellent tracks. But we were discussing in the studio last week, Sam, that have you ever been approached to have your music used in alongside, like, because it's just perfect for documentaries, music in the background when they're showing scenes and things. Have you ever had the opportunity to do that?
No.
Oh, that comes your way.
Do you know, I would absolutely love it. It's a very strange thing that, you know, when you get your music played on documentaries or films or whatever, it is literally, well, it's the quickest and best and probably last remaining method of actually making a living from music, you know. I mean, I've no doubt that this album, if it breaks even, it will only just break even. I'll never make a penny on it. And because no one buys music anymore, and not to be too negative, but the gig economy is also completely broken, and it's almost impossible to earn a living from playing live music as well. So if you can get your music on a TV show, you know, you can, you know, 1 or 2 TV shows and you've made all the debt back from making an album. So I don't really know how it works. I did have a publishing deal once, but nothing came of it. So I love it.
We said, you know, that there were tunes on there that we would recognize possibly when we're watching a film or something, and we suddenly hear that and think, oh, I've heard that bit of music before.
Yeah.
Did very well for that.
Well, we'll do our best to get it out there and make sure that you get that phone call when you come back from the Bellowhead Tour, Sam.
Thanks.
So you're all geared up for the Bellowhead Tour then, Sam?
Sort of, yeah. I was just saying before you arrived, everything I've just pushed it off screen. So all my fiddles and bagpipes and my tech case and pedal board and every item of clothing I own is just off screen. So today is run the gig twice, have a good practice, and then whack it all in the car.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Is your first date Portsmouth? Is that correct?
Yeah.
10th of November.
Yeah, so we've got a rehearsal day, one rehearsal day, then we get on the bus, then we go down to Portsmouth for a production day, do the whole lot with PA and lights and the set design and everything like that, and then wake up on the day of the first gig, do a dress rehearsal, and off we go.
Yeah.
And looking forward to it?
I am really looking forward to it. I don't really know what this emotion is. I suppose it's a lot of emotions, really, because we never thought we'd do it again when we split up. So I kind of feel like that part of my life was done. Although, you know, because I joined Bellowhead as an 18-year-old, and it became, you know, they became my family in essence. And Bellowhead is such a huge part of me, sort of becoming an adult, becoming who I am, whatever. That it never really leaves me. I always feel like there is a huge part of me is in Bellowhead. So I am looking forward to it enormously. Of course, you know, it will be very peculiar and very sad without Paul Sart in there. And, you know, because, I mean, not only did we all adore him, but he was an extraordinary musician. And as I was saying just before we started recording this, you know, he stood in between me and Rachel, and we spent most of the gig laughing. Because he was just so funny. I mean, he was hilarious on stage, and for him, he just had this sort of mischievous vibe where he would just try and make you corpse on stage all the time. So I just think, like, you know, in the middle of the gig, and I'll turn around and Paul isn't there. I think that it's going to take. I mean, we'll never really get used to it, but it'll take a few gigs to kind of go, oh my God, okay. And Paul's not there. Let's get through the gig. So yeah, I think it will be intensely emotional, particularly for the first few. But also, I mean, on a positive note, when we did that silly New York Girls lockdown video in lockdown, and it got 250,000 views in 2 days, I think. And it, you know, talking about, it's lovely to hear what people think of my music. It's absolutely bonkers to think that 6 years after we split up, people still like Bellowhead, people still listen to Bellowhead, and they're desperate to come and see us. You know, more than half the tour is sold out already, and I think the crowd is going to be what gets us through it. Really, you know, that the energy that they give us, we'll give it back tenfold. I'm predicting being completely broken by the end of this tour. I've got no work in December. I'm at home for the whole month, and I'm just planning on sleeping.
Yeah. So get ready for your tour. When does your next tour start? Is it your Unearthed tour?
Well, my band doesn't have any dates after this tour at all. I mean, essentially, God, it sounds like I'm being really negative. It's not financially viable to tour a 4-piece band at all. So I can't tour this new record because venues don't have any money, and no one, you know, it's tricky, but I'll not go on about that. So I'm not actually gigging Escape That at all after Bellowhead yet. Fingers crossed something may happen, but there's no plans. So my next work really is I'm doing a whole bunch of solo dates in February and May, just me and a fiddle, no PA, just turning up to like a few chapels and churches and halls and stuff, just me and a fiddle. So I've got a few of those gigs. And then Leverett, we've just recorded an album for our 10th anniversary, which is next year. And we have 2 10th anniversary tours, one in March and one in October. So it'll be a quiet year, sort of. I've only got two big tours and a couple of solo dates, but it'll be great. I'm looking forward to doing the Leverett 10th anniversary stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I'm conscious of the time because we said I know you've got another Zoom call to go, so
it's all right. We can be a few minutes late, but you know.
Well, in that case, anybody got any more questions for Sam while we've got him here?
Yes. Are you intending to carry on composing and writing music in the future?
Yeah, I mean, who knows really? I didn't mean to do it this time round particularly. It was sort of an accident. But I think a lot of stuff in my career is an accident. You know, I never wanted to be a solo artist, and then after the First World War stuff, and I was asked to make the Unfinished Violin, and I actually really enjoyed that process. And then when that was done, I sort of thought, well, I'll make a non-war related album, and that's when Unearthed Repeat came out. And then I thought, well, that's probably enough of that. And then lockdown happened, and I wrote this. So I think everything I've done so far has been a bit of an accident. But that said,
evolution, Sam, an evolution rather than...
yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think I will. I really enjoy the process of writing by myself. I think it's a really, as I say, I become obsessed with it, and I find it a really positive thing to do. So, but now I've done this sort of more pop influenced, this is what the inside of my pop head sounds like. I'll try something else, I guess. Don't know. I've always wanted to write for string quartet. I've always wanted to do that. So I might end up writing something for string quartet, but who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
Sounds beautiful.
Take it as it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll be able to burn yourself out on the Bellowhead tour. Give it your all.
Yeah, exactly. Sleep for
Maybe
December.
not quite. We want to hear more of your wonderful music. We don't want you burnt out about anything.
The are there any Bellowhead plans then after? I mean, it sounds like you've got a pretty full year actually next year. But do you think there'll be more Bellowhead plans coming up after this?
You're not the first person to ask, obviously. Quite a lot of people have asked this question. And the truth is there's nothing. We haven't even thought about it. So not a clue. I guess a lot of it depends on how this tour goes. And do we feel like we could do it again without Paul? And so on. So the truth is, no idea. There's certainly nothing planned, but never say never. This might be an amazing experience that we want to repeat and do again. So, I mean, I hope it is. I'd love to do it. You know, we could do a Fairport and do it every summer or something.
Wonderful.
But who knows?
It seems like it's going to be a great tribute to Paul, actually, and the fact you had that planned is sort of coincidentally you're very, very fortuitous in that respect. So. Yes, I think it could be really, really good. I know a lot of people will be very, very thrilled to think that there was a future with Bellowhead. What was the turning point that sort of got you all to decide to get back together?
Well, I suppose it was two things really. It was the silly lockdown video where people loved it and said how much they missed us, and we sort of went, oh, hang on a minute. You know, all the stuff, the 5 years of stuff has passed now. And this is just fun, and we're not writing new music, we're just, people love what we've already done, and that went really well. And then we got the offer to do that online streamed gig that we did December 2020, I think it was, and 20,000 people, well, 20,000 households bought tickets for that. So that was probably 40,000, 50,000 people watched us. And then we just sort of went, hang on a minute. We're all struggling with our solo projects or duos or whatever. And, we're sort of trying to eke out a living doing that. And maybe we should just go, hang on. We've got an incredible back catalogue here. People love it. People want to see it. People want to hear it. And, I think bands like Bellowhead, if you have a following of that size, that's so loyal and loves you so much, it's almost, I sort of feel like it's almost your duty to sort of give those people what they want, give them that experience of leaving a Bellowhead gig feeling on top of the world. Because that's what music does. Like, if we can make people feel like that, if we can give people a phenomenal night that will live, in their memories for ages, and make their year better, then let's do it.
A wise decision, I would say.
Good words. Good words.
Yeah. I'm going to finish the recording now. Okay.
Yeah.